In August 2005, an old woman named Daisy hears a train and tells her daughter Caroline the story of how they built a station back in 1918. After losing his son during the war, a blind clockmaker created a clock that ran backwards as a memorial for those who lost their sons. The clockmaker was never seen again. Daisy asks Caroline to read Benjamin Button's diary, which begins in 1985 and tells the story of Benjamin. In 1918, Thomas rushes to check on his wife, who dies after giving birth, and discovers a baby boy. He panics and rushes out of the house, where he considers drowning the baby. A cop sees him and starts chasing him, but he hides in a dark street and abandons the baby with all the money he can find in his pocket. A couple accidentally steps on the baby, making him cry. Queenie takes the baby to her room and hides him in her drawer. A doctor examines the baby and finds him nearly blind from cataracts, arthritis, and osteoporosis. The doctor doesn't think the baby will survive long. Queenie decides to keep the baby, and she introduces him to the tenants of the retirement home she works in. She calls him Benjamin and calls him her sister's child. As years pass, Benjamin's body grows, but he still looks like an old man. He lives in a retirement home and doesn't find his own looks weird, but he thinks he looks like everyone else. He calls his sister Mama and depends on her for various tasks, such as bathing and reading. He learns to read but can't walk and is confined to a wheelchair. One day, Benjamin meets Pygmy, who takes him out of the house for fun. They bond over a drink near the lake and bond over the streetcar. However, Pygmy leaves him due to an appointment, and Benjamin misses the last streetcar, so he must walk home on crutches. In 1930, Benjamin looks better and can walk on a cane. He meets Daisy, the granddaughter of one of the tenants, and they have a sweet moment together. However, Daisy's grandmother interrupts their moment. In the present, Caroline realizes that the Daisy girl from the journal is her mother. Shortly after the baby is born, Pygmy leaves the city, leaving Benjamin feeling lonely. His body gets healthier every day, and he learns to play piano. Benjamin, a young man, volunteers to become the boat's janitor and befriends Captain Mike. He is initially shocked by Mike's age but soon becomes friends with him and shares stories of his youth with working ladies. One day, Benjamin surprises Queenie by revealing his vigor and wearing her out. They have a great time together, watching a cruise ship pass by, and Benjamin decides to leave home at 17. In 1936, Benjamin leaves home and writes letters to Daisy, who is studying ballet in New York. He takes a job in Mike's tugboat and travels around the world, becoming a family to him. He receives letters from Daisy, who is studying ballet in New York. In 1941, they arrive in northern Russia, where they encounter drunkards and a heavy snowstorm. At a hotel, Benjamin meets Elizabeth, an Englishwoman unhappily married to a spy. They share tea and chat, growing closer each night. In the present, Caroline finds a postcard in which Benjamin says he fell in love with Daisy, and they start dating. The next night, they agree on rules to start an affair, like never using the word love. They spend every night in Benjamin's room getting naughty. The next morning, Benjamin learns that Elizabeth has left. The next morning, Mike announces that Japan has bombed Pearl Harbor and that he has been hired by the U.S. Navy to support the war effort. The cook quits and is with his wife, so Benjamin takes over his job. When he returns to his room to pack, he finds a note from Elizabeth saying, "It was nice to have met you." During the war, the tugboat's job is to tow crippled ships and scraps of metal so they never see the actual battles. A soldier is assigned to the boat to watch over them, and Benjamin enjoys his stories. The soldier gives Benjamin all his money, asking him to give it to his wife if something happens to him. That night, the crew hears a bell and sees fire in the distance. Benjamin's boat is the first one on the scene, but an enemy submarine is nearby, and they are attacked. The soldier in the boat fires back, buying them some time before the boat explodes and sinks. The next morning, Benjamin is left to say goodbye to Mike before he dies. In the story, Benjamin is rescued by the Allies and finds himself in Paris. He returns home at age 50, reunites with Queenie, and sees his sister as a teenager. He learns that his mom's boyfriend died a few months ago and begins living there again. One morning, Daisy visits her grandmother, and they reminisce over their old times. They go to the lake, where Daisy shows off her dance moves before kissing Benjamin. Benjamin feels confused and turns her down, so she returns to New York. As weeks pass, Benjamin gets younger and stronger. One night, Thomas comes to see him while walking with a crutch due to an infection in his foot. Thomas admits he's sick, so he doesn't have much time left. Thomas takes Benjamin to his button factory and confesses to being his father. He apologizes for abandoning him and shows him a picture of the family at his home. Thomas wants to leave everything to Benjamin before dying, but Benjamin can barely deal with this news and leaves. Benjamin decides to go back to Thomas, and they visit the lake together, finding peace with their pasts before Thomas dies. Queenie goes with Benjamin to the funeral, and he assures her she's still his mom. In 1947, Benjamin travels to New York to see Daisy at the theater and is moved by her performance. However, Daisy is shocked to see him and turns down his invitation to dinner. At the dance club, Benjamin can't stand seeing Daisy with her new boyfriend and leaves. In the present, Daisy explains that Benjamin visited to tell her about his father and that she was the first American to be invited to dance with the Bolshoi Ballet. One day, Benjamin receives an urgent letter telling him that Daisy has been hit by a taxi, and he immediately flies to Paris to visit her. Daisy notices Benjamin's youthful and handsome appearance, and she asks him to stay out of her life. Benjamin leaves Paris but stays to look out for her. In 1962, Daisy appears at Queenie's to see him, and they share a hug. In the novel, the couple Thomas and Daisy have a happy life together. However, when Queenie dies, they attend her funeral and decide to start over. Benjamin sells Thomas's house and buys a duplex for their new life, and they enjoy working together and watching the Beatles on TV. Daisy starts going to the pool, but is upset by seeing other women's perfect girls. Benjamin helps her drop the self-pity and opens a dance studio to teach little girls. One evening Benjamin visits Daisy, and she tells her she's pregnant. Benjamin has mixed feelings about the idea, as he fears the baby will be like him and that he won't be a good father due to his de-aging state. A few months later, Daisy gives birth to a healthy baby named Caroline, who is named after Benjamin's birth mother. In the present, Caroline realizes Benjamin is her real father and remarries after him. Caroline rushes out of the room to smoke, but a nurse scolds her and sends her back. Baby Caroline grows strong and healthy, but Benjamin is still worried about becoming a child and asks Daisy to find a proper father for her. Benjamin sells all of Thomas's properties and puts the money in a savings account for Caroline. Benjamin starts traveling the world, taking odd jobs to enjoy life as much as possible. One night, Benjamin comes to the dancing studio looking like a man in his 20s, and Daisy pretends he's an old friend in front of Caroline, who doesn't recognize him. The moment is interrupted by Daisy's new husband, who takes Caroline away. Daisy admits she couldn't have raised two teenagers and leaves with her family. In the present, Caroline realizes she did meet Benjamin and remembers that night. Hurricane Katrina approaches, and she decides to stay because she knows Daisy won't survive for long. Daisy receives an important phone call and finds Benjamin living in an abandoned building in New Orleans, with Daisy's name and address found in his journal. As Benjamin becomes a 5-year-old, Daisy moves to the retirement house to watch over him, and in 2003, baby Benjamin gives Daisy one last knowing look before dying. In the present, the storm worsens, and Caroline runs to check on the situation, and Daisy sees a hummingbird at the window. She says, "Goodbye, Benjamin," and finally dies.